Connecticut, we age well, we age well, we all can. In Connecticut, we age well in every town across the lifespan.
Welcome to the Age Well Academy, celebrating that our communities are stronger when we all belong. The Age Well Academy is produced by the Connecticut Age Well Collaborative, a statewide cross-sector initiative that fosters aging, dementia, and disability-inclusive communities.
The Connecticut Age Well Collaborative is an initiative of
Connecticut Community Care, identifying choices and providing services and supports to help people of all ages, abilities, ethnicities, and incomes live their best lives at home.
We're also generously supported by
the Point 32 Health Foundation,
along with
the State Department of Aging and Disability Services,
and
the Connecticut Council on Developmental Disabilities.
This year, the Age Well Academy will focus on our new statewide campaign to disrupt ageism and ableism. We'll offer an invitation to co-create the campaign with us, share opportunities for education and support, advise on how to adapt and locally implement your own campaign, and lift up inspiring efforts that are happening in Connecticut to create a deeper sense of belonging for all residents. Welcome to the 2024 Age Well Academy.
Good morning and welcome, everyone. My name is Karen Green. I'm the Network and Operations Coordinator for the Connecticut Age Well Collaborative. In alignment with our commitment to emphasize access, equity, and inclusion, we're modeling best practices for a virtual presentation. You may have noticed we provided a message during our opening for those with sensory processing disorders that we were playing music and that muting their audio might make them more comfortable. Please welcome Betty Swenton, our sign language interpreter today. Betty, thank you for helping us make our presentation more accessible to those with hearing disabilities. In addition, we have enabled closed captions and will be conscious of enunciating our words. We will be describing images and other visual content that's displayed to assist anyone with a visual or cognitive disability. Those speaking will identify themselves prior to their comments, and wherever possible, we have used a minimum font size of 22 in our slides. A link to the recording and any links shared today will be made available to attendees. If you need materials in a particular format, please let us know. We're learning and it's a work in progress, so we appreciate feedback on how to do it better. If you want more information on creating and presenting in an accessible format, please contact us at ctagewell@ctcommunitycare.org. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you Alyssa Norwood, the director of the Connecticut Age Well Collaborative.
Thank you so much, Karen. Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. I want to begin today with a quote that I'll read in a moment. And it's a beautiful quote, and it arises out of really tragic circumstances. Many of you might remember back in 2015, there was an incredibly charismatic young person named Clementa Pinckney. And Clementa Pinckney was a pastor, a politician, and tragically a martyr. He was ordained at 18, and seeing politics as complementary to his ministry, he earned master's degrees in both divinity and public administration. And then at the age of 23, he became the youngest elected Black member of South Carolina's legislature. Mr. Pinckney unfortunately died young as well. He was 43 days shy of his 42nd birthday when he welcomed a stranger into Bible study. And in 2015, that evening, just an hour later, a gunman had massacred both him and the 8 other worshipers in a racially motivated act of terrorism at the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church. He was eulogized by then President Barack Obama. And as part of his eulogy, he said this quote, "Justice grows out of recognition of ourselves in each other, that my liberty depends on you being free too." We ended our annual steering committee this past November with this story and this quote, because this is the core of our work. It's to know how deeply bound up we are in each other. And it so happens that our particular lens is about aging, dementia, and disability inclusivity, but we're all beautiful amalgams of multiple identities. So our work sits proudly in this broader inclusion container. And our specific charge is one of livable communities. And what's interesting about this work is of all of the isms, it's the only one that's about all of us, either because it touches someone we know, it's about ourselves, or it's about our future selves. We're all aging. Many of us either do or will live with a disability because the reality of change and change over time is that our minds and bodies will change. So this is the container of our work. Many of you know us already, but for those who don't, the Connecticut Age Well Collaborative is a statewide cross-sector initiative that fosters aging, dementia, and disability inclusive communities. We're leading the state statutory livable communities initiative, and we support everyone who's interested in this work, but our main audience is to help all of you involved in town government. We do this in a variety of different ways. You're here today to learn more about our campaign and how you can implement it in your community. It's called Every Age, Every Ability. You'll also learn more about the Community Leaders Fellowship, which we launched last year, learned from and refined, and it's a unique opportunity to help build community authority and to have individuals with lived experience be valued, lifted up, and work in collaboration with town government. We're going to provide you with ongoing education, resources, and support to do this work, celebrate you all, and we're also leading multi-sector planning and policy efforts because we all know that this work is broad and encompasses lots of different areas. So what makes an inclusive community? Lots of different things, and some of them are visualized on this slide. So I'll just name some of them. It's about affordable and accessible housing. It's about a broad array of transportation options. It's about public spaces and buildings that support us across the lifespan. And when we do these things well for people living with disabilities and also for all of us as we age, we make the community better for everyone. So a lot of these conversations are about physical landscape and infrastructure, but in the end, we can't really meaningfully do that work well unless we start to look at our own deeply held beliefs about what it is to age and what it is to live with a disability and our changing minds and bodies. So the campaign that you all, if you were with us back in January, learned about is really intended to be a conversation starter, to look at what we really think and feel about aging, dementia, and disability. And we invite you to be part of this year-long journey and hopefully beyond, where we can all take an opportunity to be self-reflective, to examine our perspectives, and to make shifts toward growth. So we're thrilled today. We're going to be hearing in a little while from 3 panelists who have committed to do this work at the local level. So we look forward to having them join us. But before we do that, we wanted to have you understand our broader framework and the container for this conversation before we transition to the panel and then conclude with action steps for how you could get involved. So it's now my great pleasure to introduce Christina Gray, our Community Partnerships Manager. And Christina, thank you so much.
Thank you, Alyssa. So this is Christina Gray. Alyssa opened us up with a quote. Justice grows out of recognition of ourselves and others. The question then becomes, how do we develop that recognition? So if we look to the next slide, we've developed this 5-step approach, and it starts with promoting dialogue, because dialogue is the process of communicating with each other authentically, honestly, sometimes rawly, about how ageism and ableism and other systems of oppression have affected our life. From there, dialogue can broaden our perspective, increase bias awareness, what can lead to small behavior changes, and disrupting ageism and ableism. What does this look like on the local level? So if we go to the next slide, here's how you join our campaign. Get involved with Every Age, Every Ability. In this moment, I will go through the first 3 of these 8 steps and flesh out the others a little later. First one, join the movement on social media. We will be having conversations all year long You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter and start that conversation. Step 2, download the conversation guide. We wanted this to be immediately accessible to everyone. As of today, we have created small posters with question prompts so you can start having these conversations with the people closest to you, whether that's colleagues or family members or friends. Step 3, this is where it gets into the municipal community. Bring a daring dialogue to your community. And we are so excited that we are launching this today and piloting it next week in Wethersfield. In this next slide. So this is the flyer for the Wethersfield Every Age, Every Ability Daring Dialogue. These daring dialogues, we have designed a free 2.5-hour workshop that brings together community members and local leaders to collectively challenge assumptions about aging and disability. This kind of dialogue typically is in a format of 16 hours over 2 days. We have scaled that down to 2.5 hours because we wanted it to be feasible for everybody to implement and fit into their schedule. So Wethersfield, this is the Wethersfield flyer. If you don't know Joya Zach, she is wonderful in helping organizing the logistics on their end. And we are joined today by Mayor Ken Lesser, who is the champion and made the decision to bring this dialogue to his community. He is on our panelist, and you'll be able to hear from him and ask him specific questions a little bit later on. So the daring dialogues are this twofold approach of both the education and support. The education, in that we will come to you and facilitate this community learning, and the support, in that we want to make it as easy as possible. So we are developing a toolkit where you will get a flyer template, a registration template, a timeline, a checklist, and work with you step by step. Because we know capacity is limited, but desire and hope and mission is so high. And the application's open today. We'll share a little bit more information about that at our closing and send you links to our website. So this is the daring dialogue piece. If we go to the next slide. So we talked about how do we get from promoting dialogue to increasing bias awareness. The next question is, how do we get from bias awareness to disrupting ageism and ableism? For that, we're going to look at the cycle of socialization. Next slide. Thanks. So the cycle of socialization is the cycle of oppression is a sociological theory. It describes how oppression like ageism and ableism, but also racism and sexism are perpetuate and continue. So this the original cycle was designed by a woman named Sherry Schmidt, and this has been adapted by a person named Sam Killerman, who is a self-described author, activist, and artist. Sam Killerman created the genderbed person, if you're familiar with that, and he added the internalization and difference. So this really outlines the relationship between bias and oppression and helps us understand how interrupting those can have this direct impact. So we'll flow through it with an example. So a stereotype, let me just move there we go. A stereotype, basic definition, an assumption believed to be true about an entire group of people. So one example of a stereotype, which is untrue, but real in our culture, is that deaf people are isolated. They're in isolation, they're on your own. Not true. There's a vibrant deaf community, but that's the stereotype we have. When we add our thoughts, so that came to me and I spoke it out loud, that's when we're moving into our biases and prejudice. So a bias that flows from that might be deaf people aren't active members in the hearing community. If, say, I had that bias, if we move into discrimination and action, so let's say I, as a hearing person, am organizing an event like an Agewell Academy or a daring dialogue, and I choose or don't consider having a sign language interpreter. From that discrimination, we move to oppression. So now I, as the hearing person, who have the social power because I live in a world that was designed for hearing people, have now created a situation where I withheld equitable access and inclusion to deaf folks who are marginalized. From there, we move into internalization, and the internalized messages can both be on the people who are marginalized and the people with social power. So a result from this might be a deaf person internalizing, I don't belong there at that Age Well Academy or Daring Dialogue, or they don't want me there, or I belong with my people, which has created a close-knit deaf community. Hearing folks might internalize that bias and say, well, deaf people, they really aren't involved in the community, and it's sort of a self-justification. From that internalization, we move to difference, and now we have a world or a situation where deaf people and hearing people are largely operating in different cycles, which leads us back into the stereotype. So this cycle goes around and around until we disrupt it. This is our first Age Well Academy where we have a sign language interpreter, and we're joined by Betty today. And we're so grateful for the people who gave us feedback. As Karen was saying, we want that feedback. We're particularly grateful for the people who engaged in dialogue with us, who sat down and had a conversation. Having an interpreter was not as simple as, hey, this would be a great thing to do. Okay, sure. Life is more nuanced than that. It's the real and ideal. So there's dialogue about what are the legal requirements versus the best practices, and when can captions be used instead, or the very real reality of a limited staff capacity or budget. Those are all pieces of the puzzle, and through dialogue, everybody gets to grow. And so Betty is here today, and we grew because of that dialogue. Maya Angelou has a beautiful and rightly famous quote, "Do the best you can until you know better, and when you know better, do better." So if we look to the next slide, this entire campaign and this entire year is dedicated to help us all know better so that we can do better. But first you have to know. So the first option is bring a Daring Dialogue community where we will come to you, start the conversation. If you want to choose your own adventure and get more deeply involved, the next step is to learn to lead your own Daring Dialogues. We will be hosting a facilitator training where you can send 2 to 4 members from your community to lead your own Daring Dialogues. From there, you have the option of displaying the large campaign posters, which you may have seen in a previous webinar, and they're also available on our website. And another outcome of that facilitator training is that we will teach and guide people how to design your own posters that celebrate your community and feature your residents with the words they want to describe themselves. From there, we love art. There's a traveling roadshow. You can exhibit our campaign art piece on loan for a week, and that will be released later on in the year this fall, and that's for communities that host at least 4 Daring Dialogues. And from there, get recognized for your efforts. This is hard work. It is hard work emotionally, mentally, but also logistically, and we want to celebrate you at our September event. If you are looking for something more action-driven, today is the day. We are also launching our new model of the Community Leaders Fellowship. So if we look at the next slide, Community Leaders Fellowship. This is designed to bring together, our previous model was specifically working with fellows. Our revised model is bringing in municipal leaders and municipalities in this trifecta, where we're connecting municipal leaders who are already starting to do the work for more age and ability inclusivity with fellows in their community who have the lived experience needed to build community authority. So fellows will gain skills, connection, and experience for long-term civic engagement. Municipal leaders gain connections to residents with invaluable lived experience. Municipalities gain traction toward age and ability inclusivity, and all of that together creates a more inclusive community. What the process looks like, we'll show you the step-by-step in the next slide. Okay. So commitment, first it starts from the commitment from the municipality. Are you interested and ready? Where local government decides to bring the fellowship to their town, and working with a collaborative, working with us, we will help you identify, or maybe you already have a project that will increase and benefit from the lived experience of folks with ageism and ableism. The next step, recruitment. So this process takes about 2 months because we have both a digital and a paper option to be more inclusive for folks who prefer paper. And together, the collaborative and the municipality will recruit community members with lived experience who have previously been excluded from decision-making or connection with municipal leaders, older adults, people with disabilities, people with dementia, and their care partners. The next step, we engage in a process of learning. We love learning. So we have a 3-day kickoff event where fellows will attend a workshop to build community, deepen their existing strengths, learn new skills, and undertake their project. And municipal leaders, will attend for a portion, of that workshop with fellows. From there, we make it happen. Implementation. For about 3 months, fellows will collaborate with the municipal leadership on a project, and that is ongoing support, coaching from us, but also peer coaching and group support among the fellows. The fellows are compensated $25 an hour for their work, which is funded by the collaborative, because we recognize how important lived experience is and that it should be compensated. This is so valuable that we think this is an important piece of the puzzle. The total amount that a fellow will receive will depend on the depth and the length of the project. And achievement. So by working together, the municipality and the fellows have achieved tangible, co-created process towards a more age and disability inclusive community. And that change is now grounded in community authority and lived experience, which makes it more sustainable. The application for this launches today. If you are working on age and ability inclusivity, you have a project or are considering a project that you think could benefit from the lived experience of fellows in your town, please apply. This is a co-creative process, so you don't have to have it all figured out. Our plan and hope and desire is that we will do that together. We'll talk a little bit about the application later. Now, our panel of practitioners. So we have designed opportunities to support communities in their journey, and we recognize and defer to the amazing work already being done by leaders in the field. So we are joined today by 3 amazing leaders who have already started and done this work. And I'm so excited to share and learn from their hard-won wisdom. So we will invite Adrian, Cassie, and Ken to come on screen. Welcome. And we will, if we could turn off these slides. So, yep, face-to-face. Human relations work, great to do it face-to-face. You all can introduce yourselves far better than I ever could. So I invite you to introduce yourself, your role in your community, your approach that your community has towards disrupting ageism and ableism, and any projects that you're considering or working on. Ken, you're already off mute, so we'll kick it off with you.
Thank you, Christina. I'm so excited to be here with you and everybody else. I am the proud mayor of Wethersfield, and I'm so grateful that you're bringing these opportunities to all of us. So I learned of the Connecticut Age Well Collaborative at the 2022 Conference of Municipalities Convention, where I met Alyssa and team and learned of the groundbreaking work that you're all doing. And then this past November at the same conference, CCM convention, I learned about this every age, every ability campaign that municipalities could take part in. I said, we've got to be a part of that. That is so important to host and have these dialogues. And I'm proud to say we are first in Wethersfield. And this Monday, March 11th, from 9:30 to 12, we will be hosting the first Daring Dialogue, and I'm so looking forward to this. I will be there myself. The town manager will be there. Joya Zach, who was mentioned, the economic development director, will be there. Christina will be facilitating, and I can't wait until Monday. But let me say why this is so important. I just finished a book called Being Human by Judith Heumann. Judith Heumann was one of, I see some of you shaking your heads. Judith Heumann was one of the world's leading disability rights activists and did so much for folks with disabilities. But what I learned from that book is that we've come a long way. but that we have a long way to go. And one of the ways to get us moving faster is to have these daring dialogues, to have these discussions, to have these community engagement forums. And I'm so glad that the Connecticut Age Well Collaborative is doing this, and I can't wait till Monday. So thank you, and I look forward to answering questions.
Thank you, Ken. Adrian.
Good morning, everyone, and I echo Ken's words and thank you for holding this panel and all you're doing for the aging and disabled communities around our state. My name is Adrienne Billings-Smith. For those who have any visual disabilities or impairments, I am a Black woman. I have shoulder-length Black hair, and I am wearing a teal sweater today. I am the equity coordinator for the town of West Hartford. And I got into this work. I think I've been in this work for a long time. I'm an attorney by trade. So analyzing things is what I do. This work was important to me for my family and for my community. And when I was hired as an equity coordinator, I wanted to ensure that we were doing internal work with our employees because we do serve a town of a population of about 65,000, but also externally with our community so that we were having a holistic and full circle kind of not experiment, but this thing together, because you can't stop on. I love the circle of oppression that you showed. You can't start somewhere and not continue on, because when you don't have disruptors or interrupters at all in all spaces and teaching the same language to folks, you can't really get this work done. And I think that's what's important, especially in this work when we're talking about any of the isms, is having those disruptors and having people who have the courage to speak up and speak out when they see something that is inequitable to their community. So I do this work thinking about not only the people who are serving our residents, but our residents and how they can do better in their daily lives to ensure that their neighbors feel like they belong in our community.
Thank you, Adrian. We're so glad you're here. Dr. Casella Copeland Smith.
Hi, I'm Dr. Copeland Smith. I also go by Cassie. I am the chair of the Windsor Human Relations Commission, and a lot of the work that we're doing for the town of Windsor includes having what we call a conversation series where we talk about different isms, different forms of oppression, and then what we can do to disrupt it. We also have annual celebrations, our Phenomenal Women Awards ceremony, our Bridge Builders, where we recognize community members who are doing this work, so that we uplift and celebrate and continue the conversation together. And finally, we also have an annual Juneteenth celebration. And this is, we're having our 4th annual Juneteenth celebration where we're really uplifting and celebrating and including all individuals, honoring the history of where we've come to where we are now. So that's just some of the things that our commission is doing, and we're looking forward to collaborating and doing more partnerships across towns. And thank you for having us, Christina.
Thank you. We're so glad you're here. So the first question I will toss out to the group: in your experience, how important is addressing the individual biases in the journey to collectively disrupt ageism and ableism?
I'll take
Jump
that
on
first.
in. Yep.
So I think it's very important right now. We have an employee committee group that is doing the work in various ways, but we're reading this book right now called Shared Sisterhood, and we're working off of this. It's called the Dig, Bridge, and Collective Action process. And digging is that self-evaluation piece. And I think it's so important when you're talking about ageism and ableism. We come from, I think I just came back from a conference, and I think they said there are 5 generations of people in the workspace right now. 5 generations. And each generation that came before is probably experiencing some type of ageism or some type of ableism because of how our language changes. So I think it's so important because of these different generations working together and collaborating together that we figure out ways within ourselves of what is the language we're using, how are we having these dialogues, but then passing that along. So I think as you do it yourself and recognizing and being able to self-correct, being able it's not necessarily an apology, but an acknowledgement of the work that you're doing so that people know that you're working towards something and creating trust between someone else. That's a part of that process, and that Dig Bridge collective action process is acknowledgement. I'm doing the work so that people can engage with you better. I think when you do that individual work, it will naturally build out into your community pieces. And especially as for this specific topic of ageism and ableism, walking around in municipal government, there are so many generations right now. We have the Gen Zers coming in. We have, the other generations still working, rightfully so, and doing a wonderful job with all this institutional knowledge, that when we come together and we start to speak the same language and acknowledge each other and our differences, we just do a better job as individuals in the collective.
Yeah. Thank you. So go ahead, Cassie.
To add on to that, Adrian, when you're talking about that individual education, I was really thinking we just, for Windsor, we had our One Book, One Windsor, where we vote on a book to read and understand concepts more. And we read Essential Labor by Angela Garbs. And there was a moment in the book where she said, ageism is prejudice against your future self. And I had a moment where I sat back and I was like, wow, like that hit me to really think about my own biases, my own prejudice towards my future self, and how that then, carries out through my actions towards others, whether it's for the community, within the workplace. So it's definitely an ongoing process. It's good to celebrate along the way, but to also have moments, even as leaders, to reflect and say, I'm still learning.
Huge. And I think that, guys, that's, unless Ken, you want to chime in, that my God, right? So guys, into the next piece, what growth have you seen in leaders, whether that's yourself, the way that you were just sharing, Dr. Copeland-Smith, or what growth have you seen in leaders once they take that time to engage in dialogue and examine their biases? How has it grown and perpetuated or improved the work? And you all can come off mute, talk amongst yourselves. They're here to hear from you, not me.
Yeah, I guess I'll hop in first, because I really think about when I see people grow, you become more of your authentic self. You're showing up to a conversation and I'm seeing who you want to be. And it's really humbling, because then when we're talking, when we're doing action, we're really in this together. I'm really listening to understand your perspective, listening with empathy, and we're able to communicate better in a way that is beneficial for all people, not just a political gain, not just for one person. It really is for everyone. So I think a part of the process is taking that accountability, whether it's on an internal or external level, because then I can come to the table and be more of my authentic self.
I couldn't agree with Cassie more. And on Tuesday night, we hosted a community engagement session, which was really a listening session. And we're doing another one tonight on a different topic. But this is where I see people grow. When you bring people together, you look them in the eye and you have a conversation, and the growth occurs in these conversations. And people, my experience is people want to grow, they want to learn, they want to do better. And being face to face, being an opportunity to educate and share ideas and share beliefs in a constructive way really, really is beneficial. So these listening sessions, I know that the doctor just spoke about, and that Adrian was speaking about, bringing people together really, really is important. And that's kind of the work that Connecticut Age Well Collaborative is doing. And we're trying to do a lot of that in Wethersfield.
Thank you.
And I'll just add very quickly onto that. I think When your leaders grow, your community grows. When you create spaces where people feel like they have a voice, you will see your community become a much stronger community, a much more authentic, as Dr. Copeland Smith said, community. So when your leaders demonstrate that through, their words and through their actions, through the services and programming they may provide, when your community sees that, then they grow and they start to have that expectation. And those are some ways that you begin to break down some of those barriers, and having those daring dialogues and those community conversations are part of that work. Being able to have those uncomfortable conversations for some, but real conversations, so that you do have the ability to show empathy and compassion towards your neighbor, especially during trying times. Being able to have those conversations and really seeing what's going on in your community so you can build a better and stronger community, I think is important. I think when you see leaders start to do that, you see these just stronger communities, and it shows up in everywhere, whether it be development, economically, the safety, all of those things. You'll start to see it based on how your leadership responds to those things.
Thank you. Beautifully said. Alyssa, you jumped on.
I did. The questions are starting to heat up, so I just wanted to make sure I lifted them up because we as panelists can see them, but you all can't, and some of them are being answered without the context of the question. So the first one, Ken and Christina, is for you. Folks are curious about the composition of the group that's going to be attending the Daring Dialogue in Wethersfield next week.
Ken, do you want to take that, or?
You can start, Christina, and I can build on it.
Yeah. So the Daring Dialogues are designed to build this trifecta, this intergroup dialogue, because when you are talking with people who are different from you, that's a ripe opportunity from growth. So the composition is intended to be about a third municipal leaders, about a third residents with lived experience in ageism, and about a third residents with lived experience in third ageism and third ableism, with the reality that we all hold multiple identities and some of that overlaps. The size is somewhere between 12 to 30, and Wethersfield is right in the middle at 20 for a right group.
I'll just briefly add, we're trying to understand everybody's worldview. When we understand their worldview with their backgrounds and their experiences, it makes us all relate to each other better, makes us all understand each other better, and makes us all appreciate each other better. And that's what we're trying to get through this dialogue next week and all the community conversations that we're having in Wethersfield. We're trying to bring people together.
And Ken, I just want to celebrate you and your team, because when we talk about municipal leaders, which is a broad encompassing word, it means local elected officials, it means staff, it means folks who serve on commissions. You're not there observing or watching, you're participating, right? So we're inviting all of you to step into your humanness, not just professionals, and that takes vulnerability. So I'm eager and interested to hear how it goes, and also excited for all of the other towns that are going to apply and step into this process. One other question, which is a quick one to answer, somebody had asked, there was a book, Cassie, that you had mentioned earlier. So I just wanted to contextualize the response when you put in Essential Labor by Angela Garbs. That was the response to that question. And I'll weave these in, but Christina, I'll turn it back over to you and we'll answer as we can.
Yeah. Thank you. And in we'll have a few more questions of our own, and then we'll invite Alyssa back on to pose some of your questions. So keep them coming. Thank you. So we've had, Adrian, you talked about the benefits of a community dialogue. Ken, you talked about how you have decided to bring this into your group. Dr. Copeland Smith, you've been talking about how this is an ongoing process for you. How do you decide on a high-level leadership level that the time is right for the conversation?
I'll just be really quick. I think that's the time is right for a conversation. I think when I hear little mutterings of conversations about something and it's coming from different different areas and different people and different leaders. I think that that kind of demonstrates when the time is right. But I also think that as you live in your communities, you start to recognize the ebbs and flows of your communities and their habits. So you want to be sensitive to certain things, but be ahead of things at the same time, right? So I think I think probably all of us on here have ongoing dialogue about different things in our community, and we try to be ahead of those things. Or if it's brought to our attention, we want to jump on it. But it's usually when it's when I hear it from over here, and then I get it from over here, and I'm like, okay, then it's time for us all to have a discussion, and the community needs to be involved in this discussion because we can't continue to be siloed off when we need to have these important discussions.
Yeah, and just what I heard in that is when they're already having the discussion is happening. It's just the leaders are not necessarily part of it, so we bring it together. Can Dr. Copeland-Smith, I didn't know if you wanted to add to this, or we can jump into the benefits of hosting a
I'll
community
quickly
event.
add to Adrian's comments, and everybody's been using some quotes, so I'll use one. Dr. King talked about the fierce urgency of now, the fierce urgency of now. So it is now the urgency to have these these dialogues, these discussions. We have to do this work, and we have to do it now. And so I think it's ripe time for all of us to have these conversations, for all of us.
Thank you. Dr. Copeland, did you want to jump in, or we'll move to?
Yeah. Just to echo what Adrian and Ken are saying, definitely when the conversations are already happening, but also thinking about what's going on within your state or within your specific town, if there's been policy change, if there has been different types of action. That's another way to stay ahead, asking for different opinions. There's times where, as the chair, I'll just do what's called a vibe check, where I check to see like what's everyone's feelings on this issue. Do we need to have a conversation within our space and then bring it to the community, or was this brought to the community that needs our attention for doing an event or another conversation? So that's just something that I do to be a bit proactive and reactive.
So Adrian, you were talking about what happens before the conversation, and Cassie, you were talking about what you're thinking about. What are the benefits? Meaning, this is what happened before, but once we have the dialogue, this is what the community looks like now.
I think that, the benefits are beyond anything, because when you have, and I just wrote something about it, and I said, human beings, no matter what demographic and their background, are very tribalistic if they feel like they are siloed off. So if they feel like there's any sort of bias or discrimination, we naturally go and sink back into our communities, and then that causes sometimes misinformation, right? Because now it's just it's an echo chamber of what's going on, some of your harms and whatever, rather than putting it out into the community so that we can all have a moment to process, digest, and inform what's happening and get feedback. And I think that when you have these community conversations, you're getting information that's vital for you to be a better person. To me, like if I'm going to something that maybe it's not directly affecting me or my community, I'm getting information so that I can be a better person and a better ally to support that particular demographic of people. So I think the benefits is because you stop, like I said earlier, you stop siloing off and creating your own echo chamber where you can't get out and get the support and allyship that you need to do the work that needs to be done, because we need a collective in order to to move this work, and it can't be done by just one person or one group.
Absolutely.
And to add to that, Adrian, I think about when everyone is involved for the betterment of the community, we actually hold each other accountable more, where it's accountability through action, where I will have friends, community members, people from around the Windsor area, even in the Hartford County area, who will hold us accountable for our actions, whether we've unintentionally harmed or intentionally are putting out our positive content. It depends on people's perception of our impact. And it's taking ownership, saying, we know better, we'll do better, we'll take that feedback, and we're going to continue that journey, because no one's perfect, but we're going to take that accountability and then move forward with action. So I really appreciate you sharing your insight, Adrian, because it really made me think, like, how does this really affect the community? And it's a journey together. We're all learning, we're all growing, whether it's a leadership role, whether it's being a commissioner or being a community member, we're in this together.
And Ken, you're kicking us off Monday. What are some of the benefits that you are looking to see or expect after starting these conversations?
Well, as Dr. Copeland-Smith just said, we are all on a journey. And this is a big piece of that journey, to have the dialogue, to have the discussion. I view it as a starting point, as a beginning place on that journey for us to kind of go deeper and to understand people more.
You froze a little bit.
Town government are doing it themselves.
So Ken, you froze a little bit. We heard most of it, but if you could either try again or pop the text in the chat, because I think it was really important what you shared.
I'll just briefly say we're all on a journey, and the start of that journey for us is this daring dialogue, bringing people together to have these difficult but rewarding conversations. They are rewarding. And I encourage all the other towns that are listening in to follow us. And I hope people will contact me after Monday, March 11th, to ask how it went. But we're excited.
So Alyssa and I are going to start tag teaming some of the questions coming in from you all. I can see some, and Alyssa, I invite you to jump on so we can tag team it together. So the first, you want to start?
No, it's okay. Go for it.
Okay, great. So how do you weave in working on other areas of oppression with ageism and ableism?
I'll just share, for the commission, we use the theory of intersectionality as our base of what we start with. So anytime we talk about ageism or ableism, we're bringing in the other isms, whether it's body size, race, social economic status, gender, sexual orientation. So we're really starting to weave it all together, because all oppressions are connected. So by not talking about one, it's like, well, that's a piece of the puzzle that we would be missing. So in order to see everything together, we really frame things from intersectionality to talk about how each identities are, yes, they have their own identity and they're standalones, but they're also interconnected. For example, I am a queer, Black, Indigenous woman, and it's like, those are different identities. And that brings different things to the table when we're having conversations. So it's thinking about what identities I hold, other identities that people hold, and then also the themes that we're talking about and how it all comes together into this beautiful salad, or the different layers that we're all putting into this dish together.
Yeah, I wanted to, intersectionality is the only way. And I think like you said, it's your identity is so many layers and so many different things that we want to focus on the whole person. What are you experiencing? What can we learn from you? Is how I approach it with any group of people that I interact with, and to just the point of ageism and ableism. Again, by showing me all of your intersections and how we can collaborate and support one another, but making sure that I can support you in the ways that you want to be supported. And I think that's very important for people to understand, because I can think that I'm supporting you and I'm doing a great job, but if that's not what you've asked of me, I think it's all about making sure that you are asking the individual, the whole person, how can I support you? What can I do for you, to help you on your own journey and to help inform my journey in our relationship.
Beautiful. And hearing that if your well-intentions don't match the impact, you're not actually disrupting ageism and ableism. It's just continuing, without knowing. Alyssa, did you want to, I have one more, but did you have one you want to jump in?
No, I'm watching all the great activity in the
Moderate,
chat.
okay.
So the one thing I'll name is that we started a rich conversation. We're committed to a particular end time. So know if there's something you're burning to ask that we don't address, that you can email us. We're happy as staff to address it. We're happy to pass your questions along to panelists. So don't let sunsetting time stop you from engaging in conversation. Please use the chat.
So we'll close out our last question. What support, in hindsight's 2020, and you all have done this, are in it, what support do you wish you had in starting ageism and ableism work or community conversations, wherever you think?
Well, I'll start with that one. First of all, Christina, Alyssa, you guys are giving us great support and we appreciate it. But I also want to say that I'm learning from Dr. Copeland-Smith and Adrian today, just having this conversation, being together. And one of the things we can do in a growth is kind of host some events across communities and work together. I'm just meeting some of these great folks today, and I would look forward to doing things together with communities. I think that will help us all. So you're already doing that, Alyssa and Christina, with what you're doing. And I'm learning today, and I would love to extend this and do some of this work across communities. And I think that could be a next step on the journey.
Ken, thank you. And thank you, Christina, for teeing up such thoughtful questions to all of our panelists. And again, this is only the beginning of what we hope will be a year-long conversation and beyond. So I'm going to return to sharing my screen. And in the meantime, I want to thank all of our panelists. You're still here, you're still with us, but if you could turn your screens off so that we can see the PowerPoint to the greatest extent possible. So hopefully you're excited, eager to get involved. So I wanted to talk to you about the application and selection process. I was joking with Mayor Lesser that we were reinforcing Wethersfield's desire to be first in all things. For those of you who know about the debate about which Connecticut community was founded first. So they're our pilot community. We hope to learn and grow. That will be an in-person event. We envision the majority of these to be in person because of the richness of opportunity in in-person dialogue, with full understanding that we want to embody these notions of inclusivity, and we'll explore what a virtual format could look like for community members that can't participate in person. So if you're eager and excited, as a reminder, Christina showed you a diagram before. There are two different opportunities. You can choose to pursue one, the other, or both. But to make it easier for you, we have one application. So you can either apply to have a Daring Dialogue come to your community, or you can apply to have the Community Leaders Fellowship happen in your community. And to piggyback, Ken, off of what you said, we're absolutely hopeful and excited for the opportunity to create communities of practice through this work and to connect like-minded communities so that we could all learn and grow together. So we invite you to apply. If you visit our website, which is ctagewellcollaborative.org, there are two different tabs at the top that both lead to the same common application. If you click on the campaign tag, that'll give you lots of information about the campaign and take you to our Daring Dialogue information and application. If you click on Community Leaders Fellowship, you'll launch there, and we will, in our e-news following this presentation, have links to the applications as well as to a recording of this webinar. So lots of ways to access. Applications are due at the end of the month, so March 28th by noon. feel free to contact us at ctagewell@ctcommunitycare.org if you have any questions. And in terms of our selection process, we wish, depending on the response we get, we wish that we could do this year in all 169 towns, but we'll bump up against our capacity. So we'll select and prioritize based on your town's capacity and readiness, and we'll let folks know by mid-April. So please let us know as this all unfolds if you have any questions. And as Christina mentioned, in everything the Connecticut Age Well Collaborative does, we're trying to model not just best practices, but the learning, the vulnerability, and we know that we always have an opportunity to do better. So if you look in the chat, there should be a link to something called a JOT form. The URL is there, and it's the place where we want your feedback about how we did today. So in real time, if you could listen, if you feel called to, and at the same time begin your form, we think you're more likely to finish it if you start working on it now, or keep the screen open so that you could give us your feedback right after the webinar. But we're eager to hear from you. And we also hope you'll join us at our next two events. The one to look out for in about 2 months is called Launching Our Municipal Toolkit, a how-to set of resources on disrupting ageism and ableism. So we've thrown a lot of opportunities your way today. There's this campaign that we rolled out at our last Age Well Academy that you've seen. There's the opportunity to have conversation about it through a daring dialogue. And there's an opportunity to lift up lived experience to make your town better and more inclusive. If you're really an achiever and you want to go even deeper than that, we're inviting you into a space of thinking about how do we use all of these tools to tell our own community story? How do we lift up the particular people in community and lift up narrative around what it is to be seen and to be included? And then in September, we're excited to celebrate all of you. And the last tool that I wanted to share with all of you is we're very excited, and we'll talk about this more in May, but coming later this spring, we had the privilege of being selected to write a book called A Kid's Book About Ageism. As you know, ageism and ableism too have become culturally normalized and largely invisible. So we felt it important to tell this story. The reason it's just a kid's book about ageism is the Kids Book Company does have other titles already, not under our authorship, that relate to ableism and disability, but there was a gap in their storytelling around ageism. So we're thrilled you're here. We're delighted you came today. We're stronger when we all belong. And I just want to conclude with a quote that's part of a larger poem called Choice by someone named Lynn Unger. And I'll read this piece of the poem. It's all we have, that little rudder that we employ in the midst of all the eddies and rapids, the current that pulls us inexorably toward the sea. The fact that you are swept along by the river is no excuse. So I just want to name that we're all the product of conditions, and it's not our fault, but it doesn't absolve us from the responsibility to become aware, as Christina said, to know better, to do better, and to use that rudder to make the world a better place. So we thank you all for coming today. For those with processing disorders that are interested in activating their mute button, because we have music coming, we invite you to do so now, and we'll close as we do every Age Well Academy with our theme song. And thank you all so much for being here today.
Connecticut, we age well, we age well, we all can. In Connecticut, we age well in every town across the lifespan. We all gather wisdom in our open hearts, growing stronger when we all belong. Opportunity in community, including everyone, is where it starts. In Connecticut, we age well, we age well, we all can. In Connecticut, we age well in every town across the lifespan. Got complete streets we can get around, housing choice and public space abound. Join our progress toward equity, deep connection and inclusivity. Visioning the future, we listen and we learn. Let's go where we grow all life long. When we feel seen, you know we're shining bright. When we honor choice, we know we're living right. Follow all to chart systems change, to make places we can thrive. We'll plan and zone together, dance here every season is good, it's so good, good to be alive. In Connecticut, we age well, we age well, we all can. In Connecticut, we age well in every town across the lifespan. In Connecticut, we age well, we age well, we all can. In Connecticut,